the one right after April 27th.
Oh, the one where he yelled and got really angry.
Yeah. And James kept saying, I'm going to get you so much grant money, you're not going to know what to do with it all. And I just want to ask him whatever happened to that.
Well,
I'm going to have to start crap. I just want to see what came of it.
Oh, yeah. But anyway, we're live now because I started it. So half of that was just mentioned on air. So for those that are waiting, because this is Polygon number 96, nearing that magical 100th episode, whenever it's going to be. So we're waiting for our guest. He's wrapping up his newscast, and I've already sent him the link. So, and by the way, he is like a vice president for our guest. And I'm hoping he's not going to just show up while I'm talking about him. Our guest is, well, I'll say who. Welcome. Anyway,
Hi. I'm cooking.
Yeah, but he's at KRGV in Brownsville, Harlingen. He's in South Texas. But anyway, another thing that we talked about during our test, because I did a test with him yesterday, was that, and I already somewhat knew this, that he is connected with the National Tropical Weather Conference that's at South Padre that they have every April.
Okay.
So he's like a bigwig with them. He and Alex Garcia, who's in San Antonio, he's at the Fox affiliate in San Antonio, are like the main contacts for that. And I just happened to I'm looking at the conference because, well, I'll just mention this while we're waiting for him, because these are the people that'll be at the National Weather or Tropical Weather Conference this year, which is April. What day is it? It's April 14th and 15th, I think. I don't know. It's in April. They have Dr. Neil Frank, who used to be at the NHC and was at KHOU. He's the hurricane expert there. He used to be the main weather guy at KHOU for a long time. Max Mayfield, another former director of NHC. Bill Reed, another former director of NHC. They have Dan Brown, who's the WCM of the Hurricane Center, and he's more or less taking the spot that Rick Knabb, who's the current director of the Hurricane Center, would be, because Rick Knabb is everywhere. Dr. Philip Klotzbach from Colorado State. He is actually going to do his outlook at the conference, which I think he does every year. So
that'll be fun.
They have Dan Kowalski, who's the senior meteorologist at AccuWeather, and then a former Polygon guest, Tim Marshall, who has been on this show before, and he will also be at the conference in Ankeny, I think. Yes, he will be in. He'll be in the Severe Weather Doppler Radar Conference in Ankeny at the. In fact, this conference and that conference are 2 weeks apart. So Tim Marshall's going to be busy going to conferences. And then they have John Zarella, who's from CNN. He used to work at CNN. He was like the CNN hurricane guy. He would go to all the hurricanes. He would be what James Spann would call the blow-dried boob. Except he wasn't one, because he was actually fairly decent about not getting in bad areas. He was pretty correspondent. CNN's correspondent in Miami is where he was for a long time. He isn't there now. Lou Fincher from Hurricane Consulting, Mark Suddeth from Hurricane Check will be there as well. Chris Hebert from Storm Geo will be there. He's the lead hurricane meteorologist for that. And Leslie Chapman Henderson, the president and CEO of the Federal Alliance for Safe Homes. As if which is a thing. Evidently, in Pensacola, it didn't have safe homes when the tornado hit. Josh Morgerman from iCyclone, Dr. Brian Zachary from the Storm Surge Unit of the Hurricane Center. And then they have two weather people, Ed Petrowski from WPDE. And wait a minute, somebody's making noise. Oh,
that's me. I apologize.
Okay, I was thinking it was maybe our guest. Anyway, Ed Petrowski from WPDE in Florence, South Carolina. And Rob Fowler from WCPD in Charleston, South Carolina, and they're going to talk at the Tropical Weather Conference that's going to be held in. Maybe I'll just look it up. Tell me when this thing ends. I think it's April 14th and 15th, and I'm correct. April 14th and 15th at the Hilton.
I want to say that's true.
Yes, at the Hilton Garden in South Padre. So if you want to go down, go now. And there's our guest right now. He's there, so he's at South Padre right now. He's cleared out. He's cleared out his studio and told everybody to get out.
That's pretty much it.
Just for your benefit, Tim, I just went through everybody that's going to be at the Tropical Weather Conference because I thought, yes, it sounds like a good thing to discuss while we're waiting.
Super, thank you. I appreciate that. It's going to be a great group.
Yes, it's at the Hilton Garden Inn in South Padre. So if you want to go, you better go now.
Yeah, go online to the website and get registered because there's the rooms are running out already. We've had such a good response this year. So book a room and register and come on down. We'd love to have more people.
And then if there's too many people, they'll need another hotel.
That's right. We'll find a place for you somewhere. There's a La Quinta right next door. There's several other good hotels but the host hotel it's not full yet, but I have a hunch it's going to fill up pretty soon.
Yeah. So. But anyway, everybody is like, who is this character that showed up that I called Tim?
That's what I've been wondering for a long time.
Well, and I'll say this, it ain't Tim Marshall.
No, that's true. That's true.
I've already had him on this show, so I don't need him on again for a while.
There you go.
But anyway, this is Tim Smith, who's at KRGV. I think it's KRGV. Yeah.
KRG, that's right.
In the Brownsville, it's in South Texas. Brownsville, Velasco, Harlingen, it's in that area.
Weslaco, yeah.
Yeah, that place. It's down there. It's far South Texas.
That's right. So far south, English is a foreign language.
Which is partially why we made a mention that, because Matt is in here, but he's blocked off now because he's cooking dinner for his wife. But anyway.
I'm here. I'm outside. I'm just making sure that my dogs are exercised right now. So I apologize.
Yeah, and it's so dark. So anyway. But
I apologize again. I'll be back inside in a minute.
Okay, he's busy with the dogs. Anyway. Yeah, we have everything on this show.
Yeah. So
anyway, now I've lost my train of thought. But he's down there in Velasco.
Weslaco.
Yeah, he's down there in Spanish-speaking countries. So when we typically do these, when we start these, we typically ask how you got interested into weather. So tell us how that happened. And it's kind of a long, winding road to how you got to where you are now.
Right. Well, when I was in high school, I grew up in a little town called Batesville, Indiana, and I was sitting in a classroom freshman year, and all the lights went out in the school, and they flickered on for a second, they went back off, and they stayed off, and the principal ran down the hallway yelling, tornado warning, and we hadn't had a tornado drill all year, and obviously the generators didn't work, so the lights were out, so the teacher says, get under your desks, and he wanted to go, he's a science teacher, he wanted to go outside and see what was going on, so I kind of tugged along, and we went and looked out the back door of the school, and there was a tornado about 3 miles from the school, and that was the big tornado outbreak of '73 that did so much damage up there, and so I started wondering how air, like what's in this room right now, could knock down buildings, churches, homes, things like that. But at the same time, I was a broadcast nut. I wanted to be on TV. There was a microphone I was talking on. If there was a camera, I was in front of it. So that's what I studied in college. I went to Indiana University and studied broadcast journalism with a hobby of weather. Broadcast journalism was my major in Indiana. When I graduated, a friend of mine was working here at KRGV in Weslaco, and she told me about an opening to be a reporter 3 days a week and do weekend weather. I said, well, weather's a hobby. Why not? Let me come check it out. And I was fortunate enough to get that job and came down here and did weather on the weekends for about a year. And after about a year, the main guy retired, and they offered me the main position on the condition that I would go back to school and learn more about meteorology, which I did. I eventually graduated with all the stuff from Mississippi State. I've been the chief meteorologist here for a number of years now. So I've been here a while. I've been here since 1980.
And if I may add, the guy that's so popular, he has a weather rock band named after him.
How did you know that?
I looked at your bio this morning. I was doing some research for the show, like any good podcaster would,
and I saw that. I'm a big, huge music buff. I have a drum set downstairs I've been playing for a few years, and I saw, what was it, Where's Tim or something like that, and I clicked on their Facebook page and I heard them play. They're not bad.
They're called Tim's Myth.
Yeah, that's it. Tim's Myth. Tim's Myth.
So yeah, well, that's funny that you found that. That's awesome. So yeah, that was kind of flat. They called and said, "Can we use your name?" You know, I said, "Well, I don't really own my name. The TV station owns my name technically, so even though it's mine, I own it." So, you know, get it? We went to the TV station and they said, "Yeah, that's fine." They said, "Can we use your?" I said, "Well, what image?"
Sorry.
I'm sorry. You're right. They said, "Can we use your image?" I said, "What image are you talking about?" They looked at my personal Facebook page, and when I was in college, I had an afro that was about this big, and they said, "We want to use just the profile of your afro on our drum," and the TV station said no to that. They said, "No, that's an image. It's not just a name. So no, you can't use that." So that never became the logo.
That would have been fun, but hey, things happen.
I agree.
Yeah, but we can't have it all.
That's right. That's right. So, but it was flattering that they did it, and they asked if they could use, if they could use it. It was pretty cool. Pretty cool. They're good. They're a good bunch of guys.
So when you got into this business in the early '80s, and of course back then, and this still is the case, that you have, when you start out, that there's, like you did, weekend weather and reporting, which a lot of people that are coming into this business are doing now. When you look at it now, and then back when you started, is it any different? I mean, not technologically, but is it any different today than it was then?
Well, we have tried for a long time to start people, weekend reporters as or weekend meteorologists as reporters during the week, and it's a challenge because there aren't a lot of schools that teach both journalism and meteorology, and get people to go both, down both roads. So people come in with journalism degrees, and we've got a pretty good stable of reporters here that all have good training and worked other markets as journalists. And then we've got a meteorologist who's got a great meteorology, but has never reported, never taken a class in meteorology, and we throw them in with all these reporters and say, "Okay, start reporting." And that's challenging because they don't have the training, and they can get, it can be tough for them because they're, the playing field's not even. So we do a little bit of that now, but we've really backed off of that. Now our meteorologists, for the most part, are full-time meteorologists. We've got one person who does a little bit of both, does a little weather and reports as well. But that's because he had some training in both, so that's working out for us okay. But it's changed. It's hard to get somebody that can do both now. It really is a challenge.
Which is kind of surprising. I know one of our former guests is doing the same thing, reporting and doing the weather in Bristol, Tennessee, which is Ricky Matthews, because he is a UNC Charlotte graduate. When we had him on, he was still at UNC Charlotte, and he is doing the weather and reporting. So there's a lot of them doing it, honestly, because there's several stations, especially in smaller markets or medium-sized markets, that want somebody to do that. So it's almost as if you need to be able to do at least two things in this world where everything has to be done and you have to have multiple jobs by one person.
Right. I think you're right, and I think that person who comes in and is willing to learn and say, "You know what, I've never reported before, but I'll learn," and we'll go to battle with all the serious journalists in the newsroom and say, "Hey, I want that story," and come up with ideas on their own and learn to be enterprising reporters. Once they've got that, they can do it, and they can go anywhere they want to go. They just increase their value to their station, and any station wants to hire them in the future. If you've got somebody who just comes in and says, "I can't report, I just can't do it," then they're really going to limit their marketability. And so I encourage everybody who comes in to at least try. We're the 86th, 87th market in the country now, and we've got 4 full-time meteorologists now, and it's finding somebody at this level who's got any kind of experience in both is really difficult to do. So we've kind of shied away from it. But I tell you what, if somebody's can do both, they can almost write their own ticket, which is really cool. So I encourage it.
So because because both Matt and I are in the same market. We're in market size 90.
Okay.
So, and when you look at our stations, our main stations here, one has 5 weather people, all full time. One has 3, and I think one of those 3 is a reporter, and the other one has 4. So, but I think it's just the demographics of, let's say, Brownsville, the South Texas area. Outside of tropical season, is there really anything weather exciting going on down there? It's not like there's going to be like a tornado outbreak. I just put the kiss of death on you for that.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Let me get the warning system ready. No, we don't have a lot of severe weather. We have some, but we don't have a lot. And if we have a tornado here, it's an EF0, maybe an EF1. I think we've had one EF3 as far back as records go. They're quite unusual. The big squall lines just don't get here. The dynamics are not here for it. But we do get some things occasionally, and because of that, and it'll come in with almost I don't want to say little or no notice, but usually our severe thunderstorms come when there's not a watch. When there is a watch, nothing happens, it seems like. But most of the time, there's not a watch when we get our severe weather. So
it seems as if most of your severe weather seems to be those really big elevated hailers down
we can have those
in the South Texas area. I can't tell you how many times I've looked on my radar app and just looked in amazement at the vast expanses of purples and pinks over South Texas. And I actually the big hail event that you guys had in 2012, I believe it was.
March,
was the storm that I learned what a 3-body scatter spike was.
Yeah, that was a bizarre storm. That was one that we're watching a big thunderstorm come down from the north, come down through the South Texas ranch land, and we saw one come out of Mexico at about the same time, coming up from the south. And the one coming from the north was severe. The one from the south was strong. And they merged over the west side of McAllen, which is 10 miles north of the Rio Grande, about 70 miles inland is where that is. And they merged and then stopped. They kind of came together and stopped. And when they stopped, they produced baseball-sized hail, blowing at 70 miles an hour for 40 minutes. And you think about that. There was an area in McAllen that's, about 10 blocks wide by about 30 blocks long, more or less, that every building in that area had at least one north-facing window broken. Every building, no exception. Just amazing what happened. And so I've never seen one like that, and I hope I never see one again. There were hail drifts 8 feet deep. It's just everything broken, destroyed. De-leafed all the trees, just crazy.
I'm a storm spotter by trade, you could say. I don't like to call myself a chaser just because of all the negative connotation that seems to be coming of it lately.
Right.
But I like hail. I like seeing the quarters hit the windshield. It's fun. But when you get something like that, like you said, for 40 minutes, baseballs just pounding. That's on a whole different level. That's something I don't wish upon my worst enemy.
No, and when the wind's blowing 70 miles an hour that whole time, and everything, and the drifts are piling up against homes, and again, it's 4, 5, 6 feet deep. It's just crazy. And best pictures I got where people took all their beer out and just stuck it in the hail, keep the beer out, because the power would go out or something. But a lot of broken windows and a lot of deep water because when the hail melted, it caused flooding, of course. And I was going home that night. I left here, I don't know, it was after midnight probably, and I decided I wanted to go see, go drive through it. And what was left, by this point it was all over. And so I drove through that part of McAllen, and I pretty much got stuck. I went down a street that was green because all the leaves were on the street. All the trees had been de-leafed. And it was flooded at one end, turned around, went back to the other end, and tried to just go on home from there. I couldn't because everything was flooded. I had to actually retrace my steps all the way back out of McAllen. It was the only way to get out of that part of town because it was either blocked by hail drifts or by flooding.
Wow.
Pretty amazing. Or leaves on the street. You can drive through that, of course.
It's interesting you bring up that the two cells merged and then they just kind of parked themselves over town. how did you cover that? I mean, you said it was there for 40 minutes, just kind of sitting, not moving. How did you cover that? Because I have strange visions of, yep, it's still there. It's still there.
Well, there was a little movement to it, but not much, and there were questions about whether there was a tornado embedded in it because of the wind damage that was being reported. So there were all kinds of issues that were associated with it. We'd been on the air doing a cut-in just because of the severe thunderstorm, and then we started getting calls about hail, and we said, well, okay, let's wait till we get confirmation, and then we were flooded with calls about hail. So we obviously went on the air then and just stayed on the air talking about this cell that's you look at it, show it on radar, and yeah, it's it's morphing, it's changing shape, and it's doing this number, but overall it's in the same place for that long period of time, and that just makes you go, oh crap, we got a problem here. The funny thing was, at the time, our cell phones in this studio, like so many places, wouldn't work because it's a steel building. It's the signal wouldn't come in, and it turns out that before we ever went on the air, before we ever got the first phone call, our boss, the general manager, who lives right in the middle of the area that was hit, sent me a picture of his kitchen window broken by hail and all the hail piling up on the floor of his kitchen about 5 minutes before we got the next phone call. But I never got the call until I left the building, and then all my text messages Now we have a microcell in this room, and so I've got great cell coverage in here now. But when the boss realized, he told us something that we never found out. He said that could be a problem, and so when he experienced it, he said, "Yeah, we should probably do something about that." So
wow,
quite a night.
Yeah, to say the least.
Yeah.
Now, would you consider that to be what I would call the worst severe weather episode in your 30+ years?
Well, that was certainly one of the most significant ones. Absolutely. I mean, we've done hurricanes. We had Hurricane Dolly in 2008, which affected everybody rather than that one area. We've had a few other hurricanes over the years, but nothing that did that kind of damage just came in and like boom, stomping on an area like that. That was, as far as thunderstorms go, yeah, that was probably the most significant thunderstorm that I've seen. That just doesn't happen. Now, since then, that was almost 4 years ago, every time we say there's a possibility of hail, people still, anxiety levels really go high because people think it's going to happen again.
Wow.
And we say, no, it's not. I said the odds of that happening again in your lifetime in that area, 1,000,000 to 1. It's just, it's just such a freak occurrence. Ironically, there was another hailstorm in that same area about 3 weeks later. That hail was like a little smaller than golf balls, and it lasted about 5 minutes. But you
still
can
add insult to injury.
Oh yeah, there's still blue tarps. I mean, it blew tarps on roofs for a couple of years.
Yeah.
All the roof damage. So yeah, it got people's attention.
So more or less that instead of, for example, an area that gets hit, let's say like last week, all these places that got hit by tornadoes and they have anxiety, that there it's hail, which I find fascinating that they think that hail is so just serious given the fact that it hit just one part of one town, even though your market is not that big and there's more towns. But I find that somewhat fascinating that a lot of people take hail seriously when there's so many people in other parts of the country that see a severe thunderstorm warning and don't do nothing.
Well, that's exactly right, and I think it's interesting, and it's part of that thing of you prepare for your whatever your most recent experience was. So it's just like with a hurricane. If your last experience with a hurricane was Category 5 hurricane, you're going to respond next time there's a hurricane warning. If your last experience with a hurricane is a Category 1 that kind of sideswiped you, then okay, I have problem. Should I board up? Should we I don't know. And you're going to respond based on what your most recent experience is. We saw that with Rita following Katrina. With everything that happened with Katrina. Well, when Rita was going to Houston, I mean, all hell broke loose because all of Houston said, we need to get out of here. We're going to be carrying our clothes over our heads through 8 feet of water. Because that's what they saw with Katrina for the people who didn't evacuate. So even though that wasn't a personal experience, they saw it on TV, which makes it almost as good as real. But the same thing with this. These people went through that hailstorm. Well, now every time we say hail, they think that's what's going to happen. And the odds of that happening, again, are pretty slim. But you're right. Parts of the country that see hail, half dozen times a year, they don't get ready for a hailstorm like people here. Here, people go to shelters now if there's a hailstorm. It's like, no, don't do that. So.
So when we compare this to like hurricanes, because we mentioned this, Tim, when we were testing between you and myself, that the last what I would call hurricane, because I would say you could have a Category 1, but it all depends on where it's placed, because we mentioned this, that you said Dolly was pretty much the last what I would call significant storm to come through South Texas. So a lot of people, if you hear about a hurricane coming, first off, I'd be like, a hurricane hitting something? Really? There ain't been any. There hasn't been a major hurricane hit on the U.S. coast since 2005, Wilma. I believe the last major. Hurricane, I think it was Sandy. I believe it may have
If we
been.
call it a hurricane, yeah.
So Sandy wasn't a hurricane when it made landfall, but it was.
Yeah.
I don't care what they say. But anyway, so when, let's say, a storm is coming toward the coast, South Padre, in the Brownsville area, the Rio Grande Valley area, are people going to take it seriously because Dolly wasn't a, what, quote, Katrina-like storm, comparatively speaking to Hurricane Brett from the late 90s, which was a major storm but didn't hit anybody?
I think that's a great question, and I don't know the answer to that. I think that most people are going to prepare for a Dolly, no matter what's coming. Now, if we can conjure up images of Katrina, if we've got a Category 4 or 5 coming, and we can and just keep talking about it, and use the language that motivates, which that's a social art right now, and social scientists are looking to see what that language is that will motivate people to take action. But that responsibility is going to fall back on us as the communicators to communicate that message. But I think if we've got an average hurricane, that's an oxymoron. We say we've got another Dolly type storm coming. People that had no power for a month after Dolly, if they don't already have a generator, they're going to go buy one because I don't want to live a month without power, because that's their most recent experience. People that, I never lost power at my house. I live in Edinburgh, which is 75 miles inland. Never lost power. The winds blew, but there was no damage. I boarded the windows. There were no problems. I would probably do the same thing again because I have to be the responsible one in the neighborhood. But I think that people may not react as strongly as they did for Dolly if they live there, because nothing really happened. We live on South Padre Island. That's a different story. South Padre Island had hurricane force winds for many, many hours, and they're going to say, "Oh crap, we need to get ready for this." So it just depends on where you are, and again, what your experience was, and then how well we communicate the risk and use that language that motivates people to respond appropriately.
Now, when we talk about parts of South Texas, and we mentioned this, if it's South Padre Island, the part down toward Port Isabel, where it's very populated, hotels, lots of stuff, but if you go further north, up South Padre, and then you go into Kennedy County where there's nobody living, if you say a big storm is coming, but it's going to hit that area, are people going to take it less seriously when most of your population center will be on the south side with the wind blowing offshore?
Yes, and a good example of that was Brett in 1999, which of course went into the King Ranch, and the impact on the valley, on south, we call it the Rio Grande Valley, the 4 counties at the southern tip of Texas. There was an impact, but it was minimal. It was a Category 4 hurricane, but it was so tightly wound that the winds here were, just barely hurricane force for just a little while. It was not, it was not a direct hit by any means, but it was close enough to get attention. Well, when that storm was in the Gulf of Mexico, some of the models pointed it right toward the mouth of the Rio Grande, which meant the right front quadrant would go across South Padre Island, go across all the populated areas of the Rio Grande Valley, Brownsville, Harlingen, McAllen. That's bad. But we, looking at all the forecasts and all the good information, suggested that wasn't going to happen. There was a model that said that, but the good information suggested it was going to go somewhere between here and Corpus Christi, probably closer to Corpus Christi, which is 150 miles up the coast, and kind of sideswipe us. Well, we went on the air and said that, even though the Hurricane Center's forecast brought it right to the mouth of the Rio Grande. We were in a lot of hot water, because what happened is they said, look, the blood of the people of the Rio Grande Valley is on your hands if they don't respond to the hurricane warning, because you said it's not going to hit here. Like, oh, that's interesting. And so it goes back to that social science of even though I think the Hurricane Center felt it was going to go to the King Ranch. They didn't want to say that because, they'd rather we prepare and be missed than not prepare and get hit. So, it's just kind of there's, again, that social science comes into play again. So
you said that you got a lot of heat from that. How did you push back in the, for lack of a better term, in the heat of the moment? How did you, as a crew, push back against that? How did you say, okay, here's why or whatever happened?
That's what we did. We went on and just said, look, this is the best information available. This is what we have, and this is what we believe is going to happen. And most of the models agree with us. There are some outliers that say other things are going to happen, and the official forecast is kind of being based on those outliers. And I'm not telling you don't prepare. I'm not saying that at all. You still need to prepare because a forecast can be wrong. Any forecast can be wrong. So you still need to prepare. But our best thinking right now is that it's going to be north of us, closer to Corpus Christi. And even at that, even though that turned out to be the correct forecast, closer to Corpus Christi, we thought it'd be even closer to Corpus, but it was right about halfway between here and there. Even at that, people said it doesn't matter. You shouldn't say that. You should tell them it's coming right at them, so they'll prepare. Even after the fact, that's what people said. You tell them it's coming right at them. And that brought up an interesting point. One of the Hurricane Center directors back at the time, I don't remember who it was back at the time, said our job is not to issue an accurate forecast, but to save lives. You have to think about that for a second. Our job is not to issue an accurate forecast, but to save lives. And if you read their mission statement, the very first thing in there is to save lives. That's the first and foremost thing they're supposed to do. And if saving lives may come at the expense of a better forecast. And I think that was an example of that. I think they knew it wasn't. They didn't know. They had a pretty good idea it was going to go north, but they weren't going to call off the dogs until they knew for sure that it was going to go north.
Wow.
So they're trying to save lives. Now I worry that in the long run it becomes a cry wolf thing. Every hurricane that's somewhere near here, they got to point right at Brownsville, and we have to deal with that. But that's.
Or is it a case that they're going to point it at any major metropolitan center like Houston, Corpus, New Orleans, especially with Katrina, or anywhere along the Gulf Coast, or even Florida with all the hurricanes that Florida's had over the years?
Well, I think that's a possibility. Of course, it's been, 18 years since that happened, and I think, forecasting has come so far that when you're getting that close, when you're looking at something that's 36 hours out, 24 hours out, forecasts are better. They're not perfect yet, and that's why the warnings are still pretty large areas, but they're getting better. So I think there's going to be less and less of that as time goes by, and I don't know if that's still the mantra. Next time I see Rick Knabb, I'll ask him if that's still what they're doing. I know all the former directors, and I haven't had that conversation with them yet, but maybe at the Hurricane Conference on South Padre in April, that'll be a good topic of conversation.
Yeah, because it just kind of makes me a bit confused as to wonder if you're trying to save lives by having a hurricane pointed at some place, wouldn't that, in the 24/7 world we live in now, and in the social media world we live in now, people will tend to take it too seriously, or they'll tend to hype it up, and the word hype is used too much in weather, where they'll say, oh, it's this big storm and it's coming right at us because the Hurricane Center says so. But then you say, and let's just say this, we're using the mantra from when Brett was around in the late 90s. Oh, it's heading toward Brownsville, but we really think it's not.
Well, again, I hope that we've gotten, and I think we are moving away from that. I really feel we are. I think that there is so much information available to everybody now that if the evidence is suggesting it's going to go 150 miles north or someplace where there's nobody, so many people are going to be online saying that, going, I don't know what's going on. I think there's so much pressure now to do issue an accurate forecast because people have the information at their fingertips, which we didn't have in 1999. Now you can go online, you can look at the reconnaissance information, you can see where the plane is, what the winds are, long before the advisories are put out. Now you can look at the models, look at the spaghetti models. You've got to learn which ones to believe and which ones not, because some are worthless and some are really good, and you got to know which ones to believe. And but you get good people out there like you guys who study the weather. You get, people like, Joe Bastardi at Weather Bell, and you get people like all these different people, and they're going, this is where it's going, So I think there's got to be pressure now to steer more in that direction, and I think 99% of the time, it's not an issue of hitting nothing or hitting a populated area like it was in Brett, because if it went into the King Ranch, it affected, I'm not going to say nobody, but where Brett went in 1999 was the least populated place along the entire United States coastline, and the Atlantic and Gulf Coast. So it was a safe place to say that's where it's going, or not going, as the case may be. It was a safe place. That's an unusual situation in that respect. So I think those days are probably fading, but there was a real lesson learned in that.
How does, with all that being said, that the thing that kind of keeps coming into my mind is the NHC's steps to issue the new what are they, the storm surge warnings.
Sure.
Would you call that a bit of a step forward, or would you? I'm trying to think of the best way to
lay
it out, and it's not working very well tonight. That's why I'm drinking coffee.
There you go.
Would you say that the storm surge warning would be a step forward towards that, or just kind of an addition to what's already kind of happening? If that makes any sense.
Well, what's happened is, as you guys know, the Saffir-Simpson scale, hurricane category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at one point included wind speed, barometric pressure, storm surge. Everything was included in one. In the last 10, 15 years, we've discovered that you can't tie storm surge to wind speed necessarily. You can, but not every time. And so a Category 1 storm doesn't necessarily produce a 3-foot storm surge. A Category 1 storm could produce a 30-foot storm surge. It's based more on the history of the storm, what it was a couple of days ago, what the fetch is, how much water it's got, behind it, or whether it's going right up a coastline where it can't pull as much water in. There's a lot of things that go into it. And there's Category 5 storms that may have a small storm surge. So they've broken those things out. So really, when you hear about the category of a hurricane, it's exclusively talking about the wind speed. And that might even be changed in the next few years based on what we're learning now, that the Saffir-Simpson hurricane scale may eventually become a thing of the past. But in the meantime, the storm surge warning now will be very specific. And they've got good models now that show what's going on the coast. And they can, you can actually go online to their website and you can actually see when there's a hurricane coming. They've got this model that shows where the water's going to go, how much water's going to come in. So they can issue a storm surge warning for a 10-foot storm surge, up the mouth of the Mississippi River, or, into Fort Myers or wherever it happens to be, and issue a very specific storm surge warning for a specific area, not just say we expect a 10 to 20-foot storm surge to sweep across the Florida coast. Now it's going to be very specific, tied to the specific hurricane, not just to a category. So it's changing. It's changing. The pressure doesn't really matter. That doesn't affect Joe on the street when a hurricane's coming. You don't care, but it's the wind speed and the storm surge that does matter.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's why that's going that way, and I think it's going to help in the long run. It's going to be confusing at first because you get a hurricane warning, but then you'll get a storm surge warning on top of that. So it's our job to explain what that is. And why it's been broken out like that.
It's good that you say that because obviously I'm a weather fan. I'm not gonna say I'm not, but I live in the Midwest. Hurricanes don't really affect me.
No, that's
but
not very often.
With me I'm what you would consider a spring chicken.
Okay.
I'm very new to the weather game. I've been interested since 1991, since March 13th, 1990. I've been very interested in the weather, but only recently.
What happened that day?
It was a tornado outbreak that affected my town.
Well, there you go.
And what happened was I experienced the outbreak. I watched my dentist shed get lofted in the air and thrown about 1,000 feet to the southwest, and landed in my aunt's backyard.
Oh gosh, that got you, didn't it?
Little bit. I was 9 years old at the time, and I was absolutely fascinated with it. I wasn't scared. I was fascinated. But that was just the very start of it. But what I'm quickly learning is that if I'm going to do this as a profession, for a living, is that I need to be well-rounded. I may wind up being a WCM for the office in Omaha, but I should know tropical weather, because it might affect somehow, some way, some storm 20 years in the future might be affected by a tropical system that is influencing our weather. So it's really good to hear you say those types of things, because those like me will have the clue, hey, pay attention to this. It may not be right now that you see the impact, but it'll be later down the road where you really see where this is going and how it all ties together.
There you go. And I think that's true. That I've lived here for 35 years, and with one exception, have never forecast snow. Because we don't have it. We just don't have snow here until Christmas Eve of, what year is this? 2004. But we had at my house almost 5 inches of snow Christmas Eve of 2004. And it was the only time in 35 years that I've predicted snow. And so I'm not a snow expert by any means. And there are most meteorologists in the country can outpredict me when it comes to snow, because I just don't do it. I don't have any practice at it. But I do understand it, and I do, know what to look at and where to look and things to study. But when it comes down to the nitty-gritty and saying, okay, here's the rain-snow line, and here's where the ice is going to be, and the different things like that, I beg for help from others, because it's just not something I do. But I know enough about it to probably get myself in trouble, but know enough about it.
You and me both. You and me both.
To get into it, hopefully get through it. So, but it's good to know, and even if you're in Iowa or Omaha, wherever, it's good that you know what's going on globally, and especially in the U.S.
My first lesson that I learned since I started doing my own forecast, because I'm a forecaster for a local veterans group. Whenever they have an outdoor event, they call on me to say, hey, how's the weather going to be? How's the wind going to be? Because they're motorcycles.
Okay.
They are very, very sensitive to wind.
Sure.
So they look to me for, how's the weather going to be? Is it going to rain, hail, tornadoes, wind, whatever? Every time a winter comes around, every time it gets to be about the end of October, the start of November, everybody starts sending me emails. How's the weather, or how's the winter going to be?
How's the winter going to be? Oh, good.
Yeah. How's winter going to be? Is it going to be cold? And every time I tell them the same thing. We're in Iowa. It's the winter. Grab your coat and grab your snow shovel.
There's
That's all I need to say.
Reasonable chance it's going to be cold. Yeah.
Yeah, just a little bit. Just a little bit.
I got you. Well, we say that about the summer here. Grab your bathing suit and your flip-flops, because it's summer in South Texas. You know it's going to be most of the time a certain way. Absolutely.
But that's the case even in the winter. Except instead you just put on a t-shirt, shorts, and just put on sandals, I guess.
We only got to 76 today. Come on. It was chilly.
We were only 30 degrees lower than that today.
Well, it's about 9 months out of the year pretty comfortable around here. July, August, September going to be a little hot, but otherwise it's pretty comfortable.
But before because I know you'll have to leave in 15 minutes, so I want to try to get through some of this stuff. We've already had a storm in the Atlantic this year, Alex.
Right.
When do you think, and I'm going to put you on the spot, I did for the winter weather preview a couple of months ago, and already half of them got their stuff wrong. When do you think we'll see Bonnie?
Well, I'll give you an answer. It probably won't be right, but I'll give you an answer. It seems like usually right at the beginning of the hurricane season there's something. You know,
in
like
the Gulf typically.
yeah, one of the in the homegrown regions, there's something. So I would suspect that early in the season, you know, we'll get our first regular storm. It may not be much; it may be a tropical storm that comes and goes. But I would guess that within the first couple of weeks of the season, you know, that's a guess, is all it is. But you know, call me back in June. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
That'd be my best guess.
Now, I know Phil Klotzbach will be at the Tropical Weather Conference to do the outlook.
Yes.
Do you expect, and I'm putting you on the spot again, that with El Nino weakening, do you see the season this year, since we've already had a storm, we've already had a named hurricane in the Atlantic, do you see the season being average, above average, or at least better than what we had last year in the Atlantic?
Well, and Phil's the expert, Dr. Klotzbach, the real Dr. Phil Klotzbach is the expert. But I would suggest that we will at least see an increase in activity. Because,
Couldn't get any lower.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, we can only hold on for so long without having a landfalling storm. You know, something's going to hit land eventually that's going to be big and do damage. But just in terms of total numbers, I would think we're going to see an uptick. His forecast for last year was the lowest ever, and it was a little more active than he predicted, but it was close. And with El Nino going away and with some of the other things happening, I suspect we'll see an uptick in the forecast. It's just a question of how much of an uptick. Some of the early El Nino forecasts said it was going to go away big time, go to La Nina. Now they're saying more to neutral. So we'll see how that plays out. But he will issue that forecast on the 14th of April.
Yeah.
We'll be streaming that live, everything. You know, it'll be all over the place. So
I was going to ask if you were going to stream it. So
if we don't, one of the attendees will. We'll be doing. I'm sure we'll be doing Facebook mentions with it, and everybody's gonna be doing live broadcasts. We got 2 satellite trucks that'll be here, so it'll be all over every place. So it'll go out pretty quickly. But Dr. Phil's a terrific guy and does some amazing work, and I'm impressed with everything that he's able to do. So we'll see.
now,
Really quickly, I have one question.
Okay.
You mentioned El Nino transitioning to either La Nina or a neutral phase. What are some of the other teleconnections, really quickly, because I know Jeff has a lot of stuff he wants to go through. What are some of the other things that a tropical weather forecaster would look at this stage of the game?
Well, Phil will look at the sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic, see how warm or cold the Atlantic is. Last year it was below normal temperature-wise, so that was part of the reason that it was a quiet forecast. And when the water's above normal, that's fuel for the fire. You know, you need warm water for a hurricane to go. So when it's above normal, you just kind of jump-starting the hurricanes. So he'll look at the sea surface temperatures. He'll look at the air pressure across the Atlantic from the Caribbean all the way to Africa. He'll look at what the surface pressures are doing and whether they're above or below normal. You know, a hurricane is low pressure. So if the pressure is lower than normal, again, you're kind of jump-starting the hurricane. If it's higher than normal, you're suppressing hurricanes. Last year it was higher than normal. So you had El Nino, which meant strong shear, strong winds aloft. You had cool ocean water and high air pressure. Everything that pointed toward a very quiet season. And even when storms did start, you know, they curved eastward. They never got to the U.S. for the most part. And that's, you know, the jet just turned them. That strong shear didn't just knock them apart, but actually turned them off to the northeast very quickly. So those are the big factors. There's some other things they look at, but those are the biggest factors, and they put all that together, come up with a forecast.
Very good. Thank you.
Most of it's over my head. You listen. If you can listen in, if you got the chance to listen in, and I don't know if we'll stream his whole hour-long presentation as to why he's predicting what he is, but it gets really deep really fast.
Oh, wow.
And he does it so well that you come away going, I think I got that, you know? But he's so good at it that he makes it interesting and justifies what he's forecasting.
I'll try to watch then.
Yeah.
So when we look at this season upcoming, and we've had the one, and we may have more, we probably will, and we had the strongest Eastern Pacific storm last fall, Patricia, depending on how it can be said.
Right.
And you saw how that storm blew up and then died so quickly because it made it inland, and part of that moisture got to you, but more or less clouds.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit of precipitation. do you see, and this is kind of going off of that a little bit, could you see a possibility that there'd be more storms headed more toward South Texas into Old Mexico rather than toward the Gulf of Mexico, further north, up the northern coast, the eastern coast of the Gulf, and up into the Atlantic, whereas last year we had more of these recurves? Could we see more maybe further west because El Nino is dying?
That's a good question. I don't know that I know how to answer that because they're knowing where they're going to go is something that even the Dr. Klotzbachs of the world don't venture into that. And I
always ask the hard question.
Well, that's a good question. But unfortunately, I can't say yep, that's right, or nope. I can't give you a firm answer on that because I don't know. I suspect again with the increased activity, if you have more, you're more likely to get hit somewhere. Just based on that. But typically, if El Nino goes away and we go neutral or La Nada, we call neutral La Nada here, by the way, the nothing, or go to La Nina.
Nada, I love it.
That's what we call it. The Pacific will cool, and we won't see those big storms affecting Mexico and Hawaii. That will quiet the Pacific probably, which would be good because I've got a place in Cabo, and I don't like it when it gets hit by hurricanes. I
wouldn't either.
My summer vacation, but I think the Atlantic side, where they're going to go, I really don't know. I just don't know. I don't think we're not there yet, science-wise, research-wise. We just don't have a clue. I wish I could say yes. I could, I know where to sell insurance, but I don't know.
Now, this may be one of the last things, and then I'll have you promote the hurricane conference again. That a lot of people were thinking that the southern stream this year was going to be very active, which
Correct.
would mean more storms down where you are. Outside of a couple events, especially last week, it just seems to me that the southern stream just seems to be kind of not quite what a normal El Nino would bring. Of course, not every El Nino is the same.
Right.
Are you slightly surprised that your weather has not been what I would call more active than it could have been?
Yes. Surprised. I probably shouldn't have been as surprised because we went back even before we got to winter. We looked back at the big 97, 98 El Nino, the last big strong one, and we had a wet November, December, and then it dried out in January, February, which is exactly what's happened this time. It didn't fit the mold, but it was a strong El Nino. And this one is rivaling that one, if not stronger. And so, it's doing the same thing that 97, 98 did, which is not typical of an El Nino. So I think, what we've learned is that, obviously the strength of the El Nino makes a difference. And when it gets this strong, that southern branch doesn't activate, the southern branch of the jet. Either it's not even in existence for a lot of this last 2 months. Everything stayed on the main jet stream up north. Oregon, Washington get lots of rain, record rain up there. But Southern California, which was supposed to get a lot of rain too, hasn't seen it. So that southern branch just never developed. And that looks to be a product of the El Nino just being not just El Nino, but like, Armageddon El Nino, Super El Nino. I'm sure they'll have a name for it, the strong one by the end of the season.
El Nino-geddon.
There you go.
They'll probably somehow call it polar vortex. No one.
They'll work that into it, I'm sure. But anyway, we've learned that. And if I had paid more attention to 97, 98 and had courage, I would say, nah, it's not going to be a wet winter. But I didn't have that kind of courage to go against the flow that strongly.
Yeah, because I thought that outside of the severe weather event further east, for example, like tornadoes hitting places like Louisiana, and this surprised me because when I had Rob Perillo on almost a year and some months ago, that he said, because he's in Lafayette, Louisiana, that they very rarely get tornadoes because they're too close to the Gulf.
Yeah, they just got hit this week.
But then it was east of them. But when I saw all these tornadoes down on the Gulf Coast, my mind went back to that episode when he talked about that, and I'm thinking, boy, these storms must have been really strong for them to have to develop so quickly. Because they very rarely, you can get tornadoes, but some of these were nasty. Now, of course, where you are, if the Gulf isn't to your south, it's to your east.
Correct.
And the only way you'll get anything from the Gulf is the sea breeze.
Right. Right, which is every day. Well, no, it's not every day. I would say every day in the summertime, but it's not. Houston sees it every day in the summertime. Florida does. We have a sea breeze if conditions are right. Or, well, it's there, but it produces rain when the conditions are right. The wind always comes off the Gulf, and we get the sea breeze every day, but it produces rain just certain times of the summer. So yep. So you want to talk about the conference?
Yeah, you can promote it. Go promote away.
Let's do it. It's the National Tropical Weather Conference, South Padre Island, April 13th to the 16th. We bring in all the real experts in tropical weather. Dr. Klotzbach's doing the seasonal forecast from there. He'll announce it there. It's designed for broadcast meteorologists, but of course it's open to anybody who wants to come. If you look at the sessions on the website, which is hurricanecenterlive.com, hurricanecenterlive.com, you'll see a lot of the sessions are very general about tropical weather. Some of it is geared toward broadcast meteorologists. There, you can see it. The speakers are unparalleled, the list of speakers. We've got the full support of the National Hurricane Center in Miami. Usually the current director makes it. This year he had a scheduling conflict, but you can see we've got 3 former directors coming, Neil Frank, Max Mayfield, Bill Reed. Bill is our MC for the thing. Dan Brown is the WCM from the Hurricane Center. There you see Dr. Klotzbach. You see Dan Kotloff.
Too young to be a hurricane person.
Dr. Phil is, I don't know how old he is now, but he graduated from college when he was 18 years old and had his doctorate by the time he was, I don't know, 24 or something.
Oh, it's the Doogie House of hurricanes.
Oh, he's a genius. The guy's a genius. So just check out the website. There's places there where you can register. The hotel information is all there as well. We've got broadcast Mets from all over the country coming down. And we make sure you have a good time while you're here. Part of it is learning about hurricanes, but we also want you to have fun. We try to create an experience for you so you remember where you were, and that makes you want to come back and come back and do it again next year. It's grown. We started this, and some of you are familiar with the old Islands of the Bahamas Weather Conference that went on for about 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
They did that, and it was like this. They paid for us to go. It was a free trip for all of us. We don't pay for this. If you're coming, you got to pay. But they did it for about 15 years, and after 15 years, they stopped. And when they stopped, we went about 2 years without a conference, and there was a void. As TV guys, we needed this ramp up to the season. So my friend Alex Garcia in San Antonio at KBB Fox 29, we do a lot of science stuff together. We decided to put on our own conference, so we started this one. So this will be the 4th year. And I think the first year there were about 10 broadcast meteorologists and 25 speakers. So there were more people, speaking than listening. But you got to start somewhere, right? And this year, I think total, it's still early, but we'll have, I think probably have 100, 150 people in the room this time around, so counting everybody. So it should be a good conference. And you get up close personal attention. You get to visit with Bill Reed. You get to visit with Phil Klotzbach. You get to visit with, Tim Marshall. He'll be here. Pretty much who's who in the tropical meteorology world. So John Zarrell is one of our keynote speakers from CNN. Worked many years for CNN. Covered all the big storms in Florida for CNN. Covered the space program for him. He's our keynote on Friday. He's excited about coming. He's really excited about it. So that'll be a good conference. Hope you guys can put it on your calendars.
Aside from, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Aside from the keynote speakers, do you have anybody from academia?
We tend to
slated to come in.
Outside of Dr. Klotzbach.
Right.
Right. I have to look at the schedule. I know we've had some people come over from Florida International and Florida State. I don't know what we have on this year's schedule. I guess I could look at it while we're talking. But we're trying to get somebody from Texas A&M to come down. We've not accomplished that yet, but hopefully we will, if not this year, next year. There's a lot of research that's being done that I think would, there's a lot of room to learn from that. So hopefully we will. I'm just looking at the schedule right now. I don't see anybody else outside of that. We've got a hurricane hunter, Tim Marshall. Tim.
Mm-hmm.
Leslie Chapman Henderson from FLASH, Federal Alliance for Safe Homes. They're about to start a big national initiative on hurricane preparedness, which I think is going to be terrific. They've got great things planned for that. The director of NCEP, National Center for Environmental, is coming. The TV Mets from South Carolina, who had to deal with that fire hose of a hurricane last year that just kept raining and raining and raining. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So a lot of stuff. We got a lot of stuff going on.
So
and also aside from academia, are there going to be NWA and AMS-esque like poster sessions and stuff going on in between the speakers, or are there just so many speakers you can't really fit that in?
That's pretty much it. There are no poster sessions. You do get AMS and NWA credit. I mean, you do get credit for coming. We don't have poster sessions. We're not quite there yet. This is our 4th year, but I think in another year or two we'll start doing that kind of stuff as well. You don't have multiple sessions to choose from. You go to all of them basically. There's not, at 9 a.m. you choose A, B, or C. There's A. But A is very solid. It's the seasonal outlook or something from the Hurricane Center or this session on how the guys in South Carolina handled the big storm last year. So it's really interesting, and I think I think it's going to be really good.
That's going to be a lot of fun. I really hope if there's anything else besides the Outlook that's broadcast, it's the South Carolina event coverage. I'd love to hear more about some of the meteorology from that, because there was so much water put down over South Carolina. There
was, and we've got Rob Fowler coming from WCBD, we got Jim Gandy from WLTX, Ed Petrowski from WPDE, and then a news director, which I think a different perspective. Brian Loon's coming from WCBD as well, so should be good. Looking forward to it. It's going to be a good conference.
He's getting all excited.
I am excited. I'm very excited about it.
He wishes it was April already.
Well, there's some truth in that. We really look forward to this, and a part of it is just a bunch of friends coming together, because a lot of the people that come have come every year. There's just a few more added every year. The first year there were 10. This year there'll be a whole lot more than 10. So, but the original 10 are still here, so it's kind of cool. So it's a good chance just to get together and network a little bit and go over best practices and things like that.
So before you leave, tell us how people can get a hold of you if they want to.
Sure. Email is as good as anything. Tim, T-I-M, at KRGV. That's K Rio Grande Valley, KRGV.com. Tim at KRGV.com. That's the best thing. Email me. I think I'm on Twitter. KRGV.
You are.
KRGV Tim Smith, I think, and Facebook KRGV Tim Smith as well. So I do a lot more Facebook than Twitter. I'm trying to move over, but much more Facebook than Twitter. So yeah, come on by, check it out, and email anytime, questions, comments, and hopefully I'll come back and hang out with you guys again sometime soon.
Yeah, but if that happens, that means there's something bad that's happened.
Okay, I hope I never get back to talk to you guys again. Nothing personal, but
Wait, Jeff, we are not the penalty box, okay?
Yeah.
I like that. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right, y'all
Have a
take
good
care.
weekend.
You too. Take care.
Bye now.
So there goes our guest. So there's Tim. That was one of our better guests in a while.
That guy's a good time.
But before we leave, we ain't done yet, because now we're going to discuss the current weather. Because where he discussed, he's like, it's 70. That's nice. It'll be 70 maybe in southwest Iowa tomorrow, which will be happy, except we're not on that side of the state.
That's okay. I will take my 50 and run with it.
It won't be 50. It'll probably be close to 60 tomorrow. Yeah. The thing that I'm concerned about, and this irritated me, there's this storm coming next week. I think it's Tuesday.
Of course.
There's a certain people. This just got me. I've got irritated. Somebody posted a snowfall map already.
Right.
Supposedly, I've heard about it. Henry told me this. Of course, for those that don't know, Henry was a co-host on this program before. He still is a co-owner of the Weather Network with myself, yours truly. That somebody did that. And I posted on Twitter, which you may have seen at Iowa WX, as Matt is going back outside with the dogs, that
Yes,
I posted 2 model runs, the 0Z GFS from yesterday, Thursday, and the Canadian Gem model at the same time, 18Z or noon on Tuesday. The GFS had temperatures in the 40s and 50s in southern Iowa and 20s and 30s in northern Iowa. The Canadian Gem had 20s in the entire state. Same time, 2 different models. How can you say that it is already certainty that it's going to snow and it's going to snow this much? I think we'll get snow, but is it going to be as much as some people are saying? It's all dependent on what the models are saying. And right now, there is no consistency over the models. And we are not even anywhere close for the NAM to get on it yet, because we're not going to know anything with the NAM until at least tomorrow, Saturday, or even Sunday. So I posted on my video that I did today. I put the image up. I put where the storm system was, and I said, where's snow, where rain or thunderstorms? And I said, too much uncertainty, because it's true. There is too much uncertainty yet. Will there be snow here in Iowa? Probably. How much? I don't know. Does TV stations know? No. Do they know the snow is coming? Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this: Who posted this the snow totals?
I don't want to get in trouble with, because supposedly it's another group that may have took it down already, but Henry saw it. It may have been something related to snow totals where they said snow something to the point like generic snow map or whatever. It's nothing like saying there's going to be this strip of 10 to 15 inches of snow or whatever. It's like, I don't think they got that crazy, but I didn't see it. I wasn't looking for it because I was thinking they're trying to do something that the Weather Network, the group I work for and I'm a co-founder of, I wouldn't say I'm not going to blow my horn, but I'm going to sort of do, with that snowstorm the early February blizzard that on our side of the state never happened. But in northern Iowa it did. You remember the snowstorm, the one around the beginning of the month?
Yep.
The network, myself, because this was before my father had died, when I was still before I went on bereavement, I started mentioning that storm 10 days out. And the models kept showing it. It would move generally, and I didn't start really pushing the point on it until the day before I had to stop doing work, right before what ended up being my father's passing. And then Henry and everybody else on the network took it over and took off with it, because this is funny. This is how weather geeky I am and kind of nuts. When I told Henry that my father had died the very night that he died, I told Henry also, pay attention to the snowstorm coming this weekend, that upcoming weekend, because it is going to it still looks significant and you need to be paying attention to it. So I'm like, my father has just died just like several hours ago, but I'm more or less saying we need to be paying attention to the storm because I did not want us getting left behind or something. Is that kind of odd? I was more or less being forthright because I wasn't going to be doing anything because I was going to be in mourning. But I wanted to give them a heads up. You need to keep it going and don't just kind of go, eh. Because there's been a lot of times that a lot of people look at storms coming and they go, eh. And I'm talking about TV people tend to sometimes go, eh, a lot. And then
when you're this far out in the game, I mean, just like with the last storm, because I watched your coverage of the last storm up until you couldn't do it anymore pretty closely. And this storm that's coming up is doing kind of the same thing, not in the same ways,
it's not
exactly, but it's doing just like every other storm does. It's moving a little bit. The models are picking up on some things and not so much on others. Yeah. It's a moving target. And every storm before this one and every storm after is going to be the same thing. It's going to be a moving target until it actually happens. And that's the way it's going to remain until our science comes to a place where we can be that much more certain X number of days out, or X number of more days out than what we are currently. And I don't understand what the hubbub is. Not with you. I mean, I get that, but I don't understand in general in the community what the hubbub is, because every storm is that moving target. It's going to move around a little bit. It's going to, the models aren't going to pick up precisely on what's going to happen 10 days out. It's not going to happen. And what this storm is going to do, obviously, kind of looks like what happened with last week's storm. There's going to be, not going to be, but there's showing good potential of a severe weather outbreak down south in the mid-south and the Gulf states, and somebody around us could see some snow. That's about as good as anybody can get right now. Period.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't want to say it's frustrating, but it's a little bit not off-putting either, but it's just, I'm trying to think of the best term to put it. It's, sometimes it can be confusing when you're kind of a new guy like me, when you're seeing people putting out these specific forecasts, you know, and they call them forecasts so much time out or so far out, yet a lot of other people aren't. They're being really general. Hey, we might be looking at some snow next Tuesday, or hey, we could be looking at some severe weather if the warm sector moves far enough north. Who knows? Really, at this stage of the game, it's who knows. We could see something, we could see nothing. Both have equal chance at this point.
And I have the image out that I tweeted. I mean, you look at this, it's pretty much, you can't say something's going to happen when one model says Cedar Rapids 44 and the other model says Cedar Rapids 20.
Mm-hmm.
It's not at the same time from two different models. Now, we could just go and say, well, the GFS is wrong and the Canadian's right. Or we could say, well, the Canadian's full of it and the GFS is right. Who's to say neither of them are right? You can't.
And that's where meteorologists really make their money, is that they can they can pinpoint those trends. And that's the big operative word that needs to be addressed more in the social media realm, is that any meteorologist that's worth their salt look for in models is trends, period. They just look for the same general things happening. Okay, the temperatures seem to be colder, or they seem to be warmer, or the wind direction and speed, or pressure, whatever parameter that you're looking at. All you're looking for when you're predicting the weather is trends. And you get those trends from the models. You get those trends from previous events, also known as climatology. That's where I think the biggest divide, the biggest separation point between meteorology and social meteorology is that some people are taking these CFS V2 model runs as forecasts.
Oh, I'd love to find out what the weather's going to be like on my birthday in September.
Right. That's the thing, is so many people know just enough about models that they can, in a sense, hang themselves. Granted, they hang themselves in their eyes in a good way, because they get follows, they get likes, they get shares, they get retweets, they get comments, and they could potentially monetize that. But what that does to the rest of the professional weather community does the exact opposite. It redirects, and it sounds kind of cutthroat, but it's true. It redirects traffic off of these reputable weather people's sites. It also, aside from redirecting that traffic, it also negatively serves the rest of the weather community, in that, you know, some 12-year-old or whoever it is that doesn't really know a whole lot, or doesn't have any real interest in knowing, all they want to do is get the likes and the clicks. All they know is that they could potentially monetize it or get popular. What that does is that creates a vacuum with those of us that are trying to learn the weather and those of us that are professionals in the weather community that are actually trying to push good information out to the publics and trying to keep them abreast and keep them aware and warned. And we get the blowback from their mistakes. When as we say in the military, when Joe Blow messes up, everybody else pays the price. And this isn't really sour grapes, but that's not really fair, because I mean, granted, it's the world we live in. I accept that, but that's where that separation point is that these social meteorologists, as other people call them, put out these wild and crazy things that have no real base on fact. All they have is one image, one graphic that they post out, and they blast it out to their 35,000 followers. And
that's the end of Matt. He was so mad that he left. So, yay. That's the end of the episode. Join us next week when Matt will still probably be raging again. So, I'll wait a little bit before if he comes back. Otherwise, we'll quit. So, yeah, I don't think he's coming back. I think his phone died. So, thank you for watching, I guess. That's a great way to end it. So, goodbye. See you next week. Bye.